Hi, my name is Paul and welcome to Building Blocks English. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about narrative tenses. So, narrative tenses are our past tenses. That's the past simple, past continuous, past perfect simple, and past perfect continuous. And we use these to create narratives or stories. We use them to tell a story. So, what is their function? Let's start with the past simple. This is the most common narrative tense. As you know, we use it for short, completed actions at a specific time in the past. In a narrative or a story, it tells the main sequence of events, the order of events. For example, last weekend, I got up, made breakfast, went outside, and drove to the shops. We can see that all of these verbs, got up, made, went, drove, are in the past simple. And we know that these happened in a sequence. So first I got up, then I made breakfast, then I went outside, then I drove to the shops. However, if we just use the past simple, it's a bit boring. So we need other tenses in order to make our narrative or story more interesting. One of these is, of course, the past continuous, which we use for longer actions in the past. Specifically, we use it for actions in progress when another action happened. This other action is going to be a past simple action. For example, I was driving to the shops when my favorite song came on the radio. So, the action of driving was in progress when a shorter past simple action, the song, came on the radio. And we can see that I started driving and I finished driving. While I was driving, the song came on the radio. This happened in the middle of the past continuous action. However, sometimes the past simple action interrupts the past continuous action. For example, I was driving to the shops when my car broke down. In this one, I started driving and I was driving, but then my car broke down. Obviously, I could not continue driving, so the past simple action interrupted the past continuous action and I finished or stopped driving. We can also use the past continuous to talk about longer actions in progress at the same time. For example, I was driving to the shops while my brother was taking the train to work. These longer actions are both happening at the same time. So I was driving, and at exactly the same time, my brother was taking the train to work. Finally, we can use the past continuous to give background or contextual information at the beginning of a story. You'll often see this at the start of a novel or a book. For example, the sun was shining, the birds were singing, people were jogging outside, and I was driving to the shops. This is creating a picture for you, a background of what is happening around me when my story begins. After I have created this picture, I will then return to the past simple. Suddenly, my car broke down. I got out to investigate and so on, and the story continues. So, the past simple and past continuous are very useful in narrative tenses, but we also need the past perfect. As we know from the present perfect, perfect tenses connect time periods. In the case of the past perfect, it connects the past to the past. For example, I had made breakfast before I drove to the shops. This means that the action of having made the breakfast happened before another point in the past. The past perfect is an earlier moment than the past simple or the past continuous. We often use the past perfect with time expressions like when or once, before, after, by the time, as soon as. So, when or once I had made breakfast, I drove to the shops. I made breakfast first, then I drove to the shops. Or, I had made breakfast before I drove to the shops. Or, after I had made breakfast, I drove to the shops. Notice how these expressions are giving context. They are letting you know the order of events. Also, I could say I had made breakfast by the time I drove to the shops. By the time is another way of saying before. Or as soon as I had made breakfast, I drove to the shops, which is functioning like after. So how do we form the past perfect? With the past perfect simple, we use it to talk about short actions or completed actions, and we use had plus verb 3, or the past participle. For example, I had eaten, you had read, she had run. And remember, we normally contract these in speech. So more commonly, you will hear I'd eaten, you'd read, she'd run. Of course, if there is a past perfect simple, there must be a past perfect continuous, which is for the longer actions or ongoing actions before another past action. This is formed with had plus been plus a verb ing. So I had been eating, you had been reading, she had been running. And again, contracting is normal. So I'd been eating, you'd been reading, she'd been running. To form the negative of the past perfect simple, we use had plus not plus the verb 3 or past participle. So, I had not eaten, you had not read, she had not run. Or again, it's more common to contract them. So, I hadn't eaten, you hadn't read, she hadn't run. The past perfect continuous negative form is had not plus been plus verb ing. I had not been eating. You had not been reading. She had not been running. And again, we often contract them, so I hadn't been eating. You hadn't been reading. She hadn't been running. So, when do we use the past perfect simple? As we know, it is for short, completed actions before another action in the past. For example, by the time I arrived at the shops, my car had broken down twice. Or, my car had broken down twice by the time I arrived at the shops. It doesn't matter the order I put the clauses, because by using the past perfect, you know that this action happened first. So, you know that my car had broken down twice, and then after I arrived at the shops. Also notice that I've said my car had broken down twice. This is a quantity. Just like with the present perfect simple, we use the past perfect simple to refer to quantities. And if you want to review all the uses of the perfect simple versus the perfect continuous, refer to the present perfect simple and present perfect continuous video. We use the past perfect continuous for longer actions in progress before another action in the past. For example, by the time I arrived at the shops, I had been driving for an hour. Or, I had been driving for an hour by the time I arrived at the shops. Once again, I can switch the clauses. By using the past perfect continuous, you understand which action happened first. You understand that I started driving, and I had been driving for a longer period, then I arrived. Notice as well that I say I had been driving for an hour. This is a duration, a length of time. Once again, we use perfect continuous tenses for duration or length of time. And again, if you want to review all the differences between the perfect simple and the perfect continuous, refer to the present perfect simple and present perfect continuous video. We also have time expressions we use with the past perfect. However, some of them, like before and after, don't always need to be used with the past perfect because, from their meaning, we can understand the order of the events. For example, before I arrived at the shops, my car broke down. I've used the past simple for both of these verbs. But because I have used before, you understand that first, the car broke down, and then, second, I arrived at the shops. If I said, before I arrived at the shops, my car had broken down, and used the past perfect instead, the meaning remains exactly the same. So, if I use before or after, it is not always necessary. I can just use the past simple. However, with the other time expressions, there is not always a clear context. So, if I don't use the past perfect, the meaning might change. For example, when I arrived at the shops, my car broke down. When I say this, I mean that my car broke down and then, at the same time, or just after, I arrived at the shops. But if I used the past perfect and said, when I arrived at the shops, my car had broken down, you understand that first my car had broken down and then, later, I arrived at the shops. So, these are our narrative tenses, the past simple, past continuous, past perfect simple, and past perfect continuous. All of these are really important tenses, and they are great for telling a story, which is a very useful real-world function. Do take some time to become familiar with the past perfect, as its structure is very useful in later grammar points. Anyway, that's all for now. If you have enjoyed the video, and you want to find out more, please follow the link in the video description below. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, tell all your friends, and I'll see you next time. Bye.